Okay, so yes, now we are live.
Okay, good day to you all, and please be very welcome to the fourth online gathering of Young Theosophists. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you live. So, in today's meeting, we will discuss on the topic the three objects of the Theosophical Society, in which four speakers from different parts of the globe will be sharing their reflections. I am optimistic this meeting will be fruitful for us all as the previous ones have been, and that we are all to have splendid time sharing between brothers, sisters, and all Theosophy friends. So as in the previous meetings, we will listen first to the speakers. Right after this, we will have questions and answer part. So I'd like to recommend you keep yourselves muted. And if you like to say something, please raise your hand or write it down in the chat box. We'll let you in. And in this sense, we encourage you all to participate, to ask, to comment, and share your own reflections and your own thoughts. Indeed, sometimes words don't come out, but this is an excellent opportunity to get us to know each other as Theosophists worldwide and to share on theosophical topics. So even if our comments are opposite, it's always an enriching point to express them, as here we are all learning with each other from each other. So once I've said this, I like to invite you to sit comfortably so we can prepare the mood for our meeting with a short meditation. So if you like, you can close your eyes or not, okay? Okay, so please slowly start focusing on your breathing. The way the air expands your lungs and how all your breathing muscles grow and relax in every breathing. Just listen to the breathing. Be aware of it. Inhale and exhale at your own rhythm. We are all here to make a collective work. Let us here be connected by brotherhood bonds. Let us here be one with the cosmic flow. Let it illuminate our hearts and minds. Let us be servants of the universal law. I am the pilgrim. My home is the ever becoming universe. I awake with every note of the radiant breath. I am, we are. Okay, please, when you feel ready, return the conscience to your breathing. Start slowly moving your fingers, your toes, shoulders, neck, really slowly. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, having finished this short meditation, I would like to introduce you to the first speaker. Our first speaker is Svyatoslav Lipsky. I hope I pronounced that right. Great. He was born in 1982 in Moscow, and he's a teacher of English and school administration member. He has been interested in theosophy and esoteric teaching since the late 90s and become a member of the Theosophical Society in 2019. The main focus of interest will be HPB and Mahatma's writings, Mahayana Buddhist philosophy, and Buddhist meditation. He created the website Theosophists.ru, mostly devoted to HPB, writings, articles, and books. And Svyatoslav today will talk about the three objects of the TS, all the three objects that you can see on screen. So please, Svyatoslav, be welcome, and when you're ready, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Well, good time to everyone. It's great to be with you and to have this opportunity to speak to the gathering of young Theosophists and Theosophists from all over the world. Today we speak about the three objects of the TS, and since it's for me to start the discussion, I would like to try to put things a bit into perspective. And since it's hard to imagine talking about the objects of the TS without saying anything about society itself, I would like to start by saying that we all know that TS was an initiative of the great hierarchy of those beings that guide the evolution of humanity. And at the last quarter of each century, they make an attempt to do something to help the peoples of that time. And there is a rule that although the truth has to be kept hidden, it also has to be revealed. I believe it comes from Tsongkhapa, the great reformer of Tibetan Buddhism, who lived in the 14th century. And he was the highest adept, and Mahatma letters speak about it. And also HPB has something about him in the third volume of the Secret Doctrine. So we can read about this in the Key to Theosophy also, where HPB says, quotation, "I must tell you that during the last quarter of every 100 years, an attempt is made by those masters of whom I have spoken to help on the spiritual progress of humanity in a marked and definite way. Towards the close of each century, you will invariably find that an opportunity or upheaval of spirituality, or call it mysticism if you prefer, has taken place. Someone or more persons have appeared in the world as their agents, and the greater or less amount of occult knowledge and teaching has been given out. If you care to do so, you can trace these movements back century by century as far as our detailed historical records extend." And these words we can connect with a quotation from the third volume of the Secret Doctrine, from the chapter called Lohans in China, where it said, "Among the commandments of Tsongkhapa, there is one that enjoins arhats to make an attempt to enlighten the world, including the white barbarians," in quotes, "every century at a certain specified period of the cycle. Up to the present day, none of those attempts has been very successful, she says, and then she proceeds to give some explanation of why it has to be expected. However, we can also read in the Mahatma letters about the starting of this project of the TS, letter number 45. One or two of us hoped that the world had so far advanced intellectually, if not intuitionally, that the occult doctrine might gain an intellectual acceptance, and the impulse given for a new cycle of occult research. Consent was given for the trial. So here we can see several things. Well, it is a regular initiative of the great hierarchy. This is one thing. Another thing is that there was some doubt in the beginning whether this project will be a success. But at least one of the Mahatmas, KH, I think, that decided that it could work. And it was approved by the chiefs. So we who are gathered here today and whose lives have been blessed by Theosophy in our Theosophical Sangha, we know, if we feel gratitude, then we know who particularly we can direct this, channel this gratitude to. Then we can also see that this initiative is very important, because in letter 22 we can read that they had been looking for someone to work as a messenger for about 100 years. Quotation, after nearly a century of fruitless search, our chiefs had to avail themselves of the only opportunity to send out a European body upon European soil to serve as a connecting link between that country and our own. So that messenger was HPB, as we know, and they found her eventually. And 2 years after she arrived to America, and about 4 months before the society was founded in July of 1875, HPB wrote in her scrapbook, because she used to keep scrapbooks where she like pasted newspaper articles, made some notes, such things. So she wrote, orders received from India direct to establish a philosophical religious society and choose a name for it. Also to choose Olcott. So on Tuesday, September the 7th, 1875, there was a first meeting organized at HPB's rooms in America with 17 people present to listen to a lecture where this idea was first pronounced and suggested that the society should be formed to promote the occult research. That was their angle in the first meeting. Then there was a series of meetings and discussions, and 70 days later, and on November the 70th, the society was formed and Colonel Olcott was chosen the president. So what about the objects? Looking at the history, we see that in the beginning, when TS was formed, these three objects were not formulated like this, like we have them today. General Jadasa writes about this in his Golden Book of the Theosophical Society. He says, at the time of the founding of the Theosophical Society in 1875, there was a single general statement of its objects. The objects of the society are to collect and diffuse a knowledge of the laws which govern the universe. Then we can find that over the course of years, there was a series of changes of those formulas, of those definitions of the objects. And for example, in 1878, we can read HPB explains in her writings that there are 6 objectives, which, well, they are rather lengthy. I will not read them. They are closely related to the objects that we have today, but go much into detail and different aspects and give different accents than the ones we are used to today. Then in years, in some years, there are meetings of General Council, and the rules of the society and the objects of the society were revised and reformulated. In years 1879, 1881, 1886, 1890, 1894, at least such meetings were held. And in yes, I think in 1905, on the 3rd of April, there was a meeting. No, well, somewhere, I think at the end of the 19th century, maybe 1896, there was a meeting when the final formula of the three objects that we are used to today was accepted. And that's what we can see at the slide in the screen. So thinking about the essence of the objects and why the TS was founded, well, why do we need the objects? I think we can say that's because they tell us where to go and what to do and where to focus our efforts. And from many works of Mahatmas, HPB, and others, we can learn that in the 19th century, there were two extremely serious problems, well, several, of course, but two especially serious problems on the scope of humanity and in the field of mentality, field of thinking. One of them was that the minds of thinking people, of intellectual people, were drifting towards religious dogmatism, blind dogmatism and superstition on the one hand, and the second one was that the minds of other intellectual people were drifting towards the blind materialism promoted very much by the materialistic science. And the rest of the society that feels naturally that, well, they follow the example maybe of those who are well educated, intelligent, successful, they were pulled with them into this abyss. So there was a necessity to introduce a third way for those who have interest in these things, who are looking for the answers, to show that, well, you can be spiritual without being dogmatic, and at the same time you can be scientific in the best sense of the word, without getting stuck in this blind materialism. And there is a very significant letter, I think we know this letter by Mahachohan, written in 1880. I would like to read a quotation from this letter. It's really quite difficult to choose a quotation from this letter, I should say, because the whole letter is like one aphorism. But well, I will read like a minute long quotation. The intellectual portions of mankind seem to be fast dividing into two classes. The one unconsciously preparing for itself long periods of temporary annihilation or states of non-consciousness, owing to the deliberate surrender of their intellect, its imprisonment in the narrow grooves of bigotry and superstition, a process which cannot fail to lead to the utter deformation of the intellectual principle. The other, unrestrainedly indulging its animal propensities, with the deliberate intention of submitting to annihilation, pure and simple, in cases of failure, to millenniums of degradation after physical dissolution. Those intellectual classes, reacting upon the ignorant masses which they attract and which look up to them as noble and fit examples to follow, degrade and morally ruin those they ought to protect and guide. Between degrading superstition and still more degrading brutal materialism, the white dove of truth has hardly room where to rest her weary, unwelcome foot. It's time that Theosophy should enter the arena. The sons of Theosophists are more likely to become in their turn Theosophists than anything else. No messenger of truth, no prophet has ever achieved during his lifetime a complete triumph, not even Buddha. The Theosophical Society was chosen as the cornerstone, the foundation of the future religion of humanity. To achieve the proposed object, a greater, wiser, and especially a more benevolent intermingling of the high and the low, the alpha and the omega of the society was determined upon. The white race must be the first to stretch out the hand of fellowship to the dark nations, to call the poor, despised, in quotes, nigger brothers. This prospect may not smile to all. He is not Theosophist who object to this principle. Of course, it was written in the 19th century, the situation at the time, but I think, well, this letter and this quotation shows very much the three objects clearly explained here. Some Theosophists I know call this letter a kind of a constitution of the TS because it contains a view of what TS is, what it's supposed to do, why it was formed, from the point of view of the highest adept, and like has this wide perspective that is given. According to the same letter, people suffer so much because they do not have a correct philosophy and treat their life in the wrong way, in the imperfect way that leads to tremendous struggle for life, which produces a lot of suffering. And well, I think this all is clearly related to the three objects of TS. And so the first object is the most important one, and I think we could say that the second and the third are rather like assistance. They help to achieve the first object, which is the goal of evolution. We know that the purpose of all evolution is oneness. We all came from oneness, and we will all return there after our evolutionary journey. So basically everything that leads to separation leads to suffering. And well, we have so many examples that I don't even know where to start. We have Inquisition is a very bright example, just one very bright example, where people inflicted terrible suffering on other people who just had different thinking. That's all. And speaking maybe more esoterically in terms of Buddhism, we know that all crashes or afflicting emotions, which are the source of all suffering, come from the self-centered attitude, the delusion of self, this attachments to false self, which is also called the Great Heresy. So it's only natural that the society that aims to help the evolutionary process is trying to heal these problems and try to give remedy to this illness. Well, the second goal shows us that all religions and philosophy have the same source, which also supports the first goal, but also gives like an antidote to this tendency of superstition and blind dogmatism that is very much prevalent in external, widely spread religions. And the third goal shows us that, well, there is much beyond the physical body and the physical world, and that our life is, well, physical life is not everything that exists. We are immortal beings, showing that there are great powers hidden in man, in human being, and in nature. And through this, well, it also helps to achieve the first object. Well, I think that in conclusion, I would like to say that it seems to me that the purpose of establishing of the TS was compassion and attempts to help evolution. And well, this is a topic very much discussed. I mean, the three objects that we discussed today is very much reflected by Theosophists and members of TS throughout this 145 years. So we can read many valuable works on the subject by prominent Theosophists. But I believe it's very profitable for us to spend some time reflecting, thinking about these three objects, because if the TS was the initiative, or is the initiative of the great hierarchy to help humanity in its evolutionary development, and then the three objects of the society show the essence of this evolutionary development. And so the development that we as human family will have to will undergo in the future periods. So it's seems to me a very important understanding to acquire. Thank you very much. That's what I wanted to say today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Svyatoslav, for sharing your reflections on the three objects, and mainly to put the emphasis that TS is the Great Hierarchy Initiative. So our next speaker is Julian Ochoa. Julian Ochoa has been a member of the Theosophical Society in Australia for 19 years. And at the present moment, he is studying a postgrad in safety and strategic studies. Julian Ochoa is going to talk about the first object of the MTS. So we welcome Julian, and whenever you want, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Excellent. Well, I didn't memorize what I was gonna say, so I'm gonna have to read it. Hopefully that's okay. So basically, I'm just gonna focus on the first object, and I'll start with what I wrote. One may think that the first object is a topic to be overlooked, as it is unimportant in this day and age, or it's perceived to be unimportant. We feel that we have achieved the idea of brotherhood through globalization, technology, and social media. We might tell ourselves, I am a financial member of the Theosophical Society, which professes universal brotherhood. Therefore, I don't have to think about what the first object tells us about the deeper aspects of human relationships. Historically, the first object was not part of the first draft of the objects made on the Foundation Day in 1975 in New York. Perhaps time and location may reveal one reason for that. The American Civil War had just only passed, and systemic racism was still very strong. And and all the Foundation members were Americans of European descent, including Blavatsky, she was an American citizen. However, universal brotherhood, even though universal brotherhood was not mentioned in the first object at that particular time, words of the same manner of those of our current first object were inserted in the preamble to the original bylaws of the society for those who wanted to join. It cannot be said that the first members were not aware of racial, gender, and class discrimination. Blavatsky by that time had traveled extensively around the world and had seen how the different colonial powers treated people. She herself experienced poverty and gender discrimination for being a woman traveler and an adventurer. 13 years after the foundation of the Theosophical Society, Blavatsky published in 1888 The Secret Doctrine, her magnum opus, the book which would give insights into the occult origins of man and his place in the universe. From the beginning, the secret doctrine itself was clear to explain, in the three fundamental propositions, the idea that all souls emanate from the one true source. It also brought to light the concept of the oneness of all beings in this universe. The third principle remarks that all souls exist as part of the universal oversoul, and that we all go through the universal cycle of death and rebirth, karma and reincarnation, those laws that lead us all on the path of regeneration and reintegration back to the great oversoul. When the TS headquarters were moved to India as directed by HPB's masters, it was with the intention of making the society a universal brotherhood. They explained that the TS in America would not have survived the political spirit of the locals. The society would have dissipated and forgotten as other occult groups that have come and gone in other parts of the world. The spirit of respect and tolerance for all religious and philosophical ideas by the people of India was seen by the adepts as a perfect reason to establish the headquarters in India. Throughout the early years of the society, The objects underwent many changes, and it was when the headquarters was established in India that the first object was introduced. The first object was drafted as a way to indicate that the society and its teachings was open to all, not just the few. The only true requirement was, and still is, a desire for truth and knowledge. John Algeo highlighted the following passage regarding the first object in Quest magazine. The inner founders of the Theosophical Society were always clear on this issue. In one of his earliest letters to APCnet, letter number 5, the teacher known as KH wrote, "The term universal brotherhood is no idle phrase. Humanity, in the mass, has a paramount claim upon us. It is the only secure foundation for universal morality, and it is the aspiration of the true adept." And again, in letter number 12, he wrote, "The chiefs want a brotherhood of humanity, a real universal fraternity started, an institution which would make itself known throughout the world and arrest the attention of the highest minds. They emphatically did not want a school of magic, and in general dismissed the importance and value of all psychic phenomena." The first object was groundbreaking for its time, especially because it was created in British India, a place where the British had been ruling as colonial masters for over a century. The establishment of the society in India unsettled the British, the Christian missionaries, and some local religious authorities, more particularly because its main founder was a Russian woman. What more can you ask? A Russian woman with an American passport talking about universal brotherhood. Many great women have joined the society, but in the early days, a very remarkable woman from Britain joined the society and traveled to be with Blavatsky in India, Annie Besant. Remarkable because before joining the society, she had participated in the British labor movement. She was involved with the Fabians and was a suffragette. If they thought Blavatsky was stirring things, Annie Besant helped solidify the society globally, and in India she completed many philanthropic projects on behalf of the society, and more importantly, she participated in the independence movement of India from British rule. The first object, I would say, has always been the main drive of the society since the beginning. The adepts behind Blavatsky wanted a society that would dispel the philosophical materialism at the time, but more than that, the plan was to shed light on the ancient truths. They foresaw great changes were coming for humanity. Therefore, books like The Secret Doctrine needed to be published. Spaces like the TS had to be created to allow seekers of truth to find a refuge, to study, and to meet kindred spirits. In the present, humanity is living in difficult conditions. We thought globalization had united us in joy, but instead it created more social divisions, more hatred, discrimination, greed, etc. Having said that, our collective aloofness and amnesia was soon shaken with the reality of climate change and the pandemic, which is still not under control. In more modest countries, we forgot that there are wars, famines, and sufferings of all kinds in many parts of our world. The pandemic has given us a little bit of a shakeup to let us know that we are not on our own, but that we are participants and enablers of this current global system that is enslaving everyone. We are not politicians or billionaires, but we are supporting directly or indirectly a system that is creating a global catastrophe. As Theosophists, our duty in the world is not just to show up to meetings or to give talks, but to embody the teachings we so much profess, to live them to the core. Don't let the society be a coffee club or just a place to study a book, but a place where we practice brotherhood and kindness. In my opinion, the three objects are like the 3 degrees of Freemasonry. You have to go through them one by one. You have to experience them step by step, internalize each one, meditate on each object, and contemplate its many meanings and dimensions. Unlike in Masonry, you can jump to focusing on the second and third objects, but the truth is that they won't make sense without working on the first object. To focus on the second and third objects whilst ignoring the first object is like building a statue of marble but with feet of clay. Soon the feet will crumble and the statue will fall and break. As Theosophists, we need to act with urgency and do away with what Krishnamurti called the crutches, the things that hold us down, all the divisions and labels we created to build walls between us. We need to do away with gender discrimination, racism, classism, political divisions, intellectualism, judgmentalism, narcissism. Freedom of thought and freedom of speech is crucial in our society. We can't continue fighting over who is right or wrong. All these conflicts is what's holding us from growing more. I invite all Theosophists not only to promote Theosophy, but to embody Theosophy, to internalize the Theosophic teachings, and to live by example, practicing ideas such as the first object of true universal brotherhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian, for reminding us how vital the objects are, and especially the first one, and how practical it is in reality. Thank you. Okay, our third speaker is Kristin Lim. Kristin was born and raised in Singapore, and she has been placed there for 4 years now. Before that, she went to school and worked in New York in finance, and she became a member of the TS in last year, right? Okay. She's a keen practitioner of various modalities, including sound meditation and Qigong, where she believes she can be bringing a spirit of self-inquiry and exploration. Thanks for being here, Kristin. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. and thank you, Miriam, for the introduction. You can all see my slides, okay? Yep, okay, great. So I thought really long about what I was going to say today and whether I was actually going to attempt a comparative study of religion and philosophy of science. So everyone when I told my fellow Theosophists in Singapore that I was doing the second object, they all said, wow, that is the hardest one. Why did you pick that one? So, you know, I'm far from being an expert in any of these 3 topics, and the weeks that I had to prepare for this talk was definitely not enough for me to become an expert either. So I've decided to focus today on the topic of religion within the second object itself. So today I would like to bring you through my own experiences with religion and share with you some of the insights that I've gained as I reflect on this journey. So this is me when I was about 1 year old. And growing up, my immediate family was not religious, but I had my share of well-meaning aunts who were warning me about the evils of things like yoga or Harry Potter, which I did not find sufficient reason to believe, and I thought was cloaked in superstition, even at that young age. And not to mention growing up reading about the number of scandals that affected many religions and many religious organizations, abuse by religious figures in positions of power, that often disproportionately affected the lives of women and children. So all this really left me with a deep sense of anger and mistrust, that all these injustices and abuses of power happen under the guise of religion. So I remember a Catholic boy that I dated in my teens looking me in the eye and informing me in all seriousness. He told me, "You do know that if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to end up in hell." And it was clear that there were no two ways about that for him. And at that time, I simply thought, we can agree to disagree on that. Anyway, that relationship fizzled out fairly quickly for more mundane, non-hell related reasons. But what it did was really raise more unanswered questions for me that I had pushed to the back of my mind for several more years. Where was the conclusive, definitive proof that heaven or even hell existed? Did God even exist? And while I certainly didn't want to go to hell, at that time I felt that fear and insecurity was hardly a good enough reason for me to sign up with a particular faith. So I didn't want to treat a belief in God as an insurance policy for my soul. So later in my 20s, I started to study Buddhism. And by now, my mother had become a Buddhist herself. So while I was fortunate to have parents who were fairly open-minded and they left me to make my own choices in this matter, my mother's friends from her weekly Buddhist study group were not so charitable. So one day I attended this study group with my mother, and I made the unfortunate decision of revealing to them that I had started what to me was a very innocent, fairly secular meditation practice, but a practice that was different from theirs. So I was promptly told off, and with concerned faces, they tried to talk me out of it, made me promise I wouldn't do it anymore. And their way was the best way, I was told. And it was all I needed to get my meditative and religious needs met. I was discouraged, baffled, and indignant all at once, and needless to say, I did go back. So the fact was that these were one of my few experiences with what a couple of our speakers earlier have talked about, with dogma. And the unwavering views that I had encountered through my religious experiences simply did not sit well with my upbringing in critical thought and inquiry. And it didn't sit well with the deep sense of injustice I felt had been inflicted in the name of religion. So as a result, I was turned off from organized religion and therefore religion itself for a long time. And to be clear, these experiences are not unique to Christianity or Catholicism or Buddhism, and I'm sure that similar encounters take place with religions of all stripes. But how and why should one move past this form of negativity in the face of dogma? So here I have a quote from Robert Elwood, a retired professor of religion at the University of Southern California and a Theosophist. And he wrote the following, and I quote, "Negative stereotypes derive from unfortunate personal encounters with disruptive examples of a religion. If one is truly going to turn the bitterness to something positive, a process as arduous as resolving anger may be required. But it is important for the sake of one's own spiritual growth in love and understanding to work the difficulty through by endeavoring, whether or not one agrees with the religion, to find good contemporary exemplars of it, and to seek the virtue of empathetic love toward those to whom it is important. Few religions are all bad for everyone whose lives they touch." So there was still a sliver of openness in my heart, one that stemmed from a deep desire for answers to why we are here and from where we have come. And gradually, through small, seemingly insignificant incidents that glimmer of openness, and really that glimmer of hope was pried open like a wedge and became larger over time. I realized that it was the sense of wonderment and awe that I got and still do when I'm standing on a mountain, and realizing that this feeling was not so different from the tears that well up in my eyes when I sit through songs of worship at a friend's church wedding, or having the privilege of meeting the head of a renowned Buddhist organization, a woman who had effected so much change and good from the ground up over decades, and the sense of reverence I had felt when I met her. It was dropping in to sit in the church that was on the same street as my apartment after a long, often frustrating day at work, and even just for 5 minutes, feeling the deepest sense of peace I'd felt all day. There were many more experiences after this, again, seemingly small incidents to me at that time, and they served to really open my willingness to experience something sublime and something divine. I came to see that my aversion was closing me off to various expressions of this divinity, and that it sowed fear and negativity in my heart. Later, I'd also come to see that this aversion itself meant that I had gone off a middle path. So, what now? Where does that leave us young Theosophists as it relates to the second object and specifically to the study of religion? So about 2 months ago, I had a deep and lengthy discussion with a Muslim colleague of mine over tea, where we exchanged ideas about religion with a mutual curiosity and healthy respect, without fear of broaching more controversial subjects or offending the other party. It was a discussion done with respect, and most importantly, a discussion done in good faith, because there was a feeling that we were simply two travelers on a path, trying to make sense of something far greater than ourselves. There was a sense of connection, of brotherhood, a sense that there is a fundamental humanity that ties us together. And this is why, to me, as it is often said, the second object cannot happen without the first. To even think about embarking on any kind of study of religion, much less a comparative study of religions, I believe that one should begin with an open heart, or at the very least, an intention of openness and a remembrance of our common humanity. I am far from an expert myself, but I would like to take this opportunity to encourage every one of us here, to have more conversations about religion with people whose beliefs may not be the same as ours. A professor of psychiatry at Georgetown University, Richard Wargaman, wrote a paper titled "Religion, the Last Taboo." And indeed, it is my sense that there is a certain off-limitness about this matter, that we must tread lightly and tiptoe around this R word in all kinds of circumstances, from workplaces to family dinners. And yet I would argue that these multiple fears, fear of controversy, fear of offense, fear of encountering dogma, or of unwittingly being dogmatic ourselves, is something that ought to be overcome. For little understanding or study can come out of a lack of debate, an exchange of energy, an exchange of ideas. So to conclude, I leave you with a quote from someone with far more knowledge than I do, and I'll read this to you. "Religion, as I have sometimes thought, is a great crown made up of numerous jewels of varying colors and hues. The skilled jeweler fastens them with the gold of love in the setting of knowledge, and at the very top, he places the Kohinoor of the divine wisdom, the white diamond which has in it every color and shows no one hue alone. This is the crown that he will one day place on the brow of humanity, which, enthroned on earth, will at last know its unity and know it is one with the divine oneness. So again, I challenge you to be unafraid of asking difficult questions, of having difficult conversations that may make others question their beliefs or you your own. And perhaps from there, we may catch a glimpse of the goodness and of the divine that exists in all religions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristin. Thank you so much for sharing your reflections and your experiences. Okay, our fourth and final speaker is Yunuen. Yunuen was born in Mexico City. Even though her formal studies are in the field of health sciences, she's always been interested in knowing cultures, places, people, and languages different from those familiar to her. About 20 years ago, she realized how vital are her relationships with other people and her environment in general. Thus, to get a more profound knowledge about herself and to improve those relationships, she started a Gestalt psychotherapy process that in the long term guided her to explore theater improvisation. Although she gained a deeper insight into her thoughts, emotions, and actions, she felt there was still an unexplored part of herself. She realized was her soul or her higher self and connected her somehow to the everything, God, the universe, or whatever we can call that. For some reason, the creating source invited her to come to this world at this time. It made Yunuen coincide in time and space with all those people she had met so far, people who have always made her learn something. Her curiosity to know more about that creating source and her relationship to it was Yunuen's motivation to get close not only to Theosophical Society, where she became a member in April 2017, but to some religious studies and other groups, looking at them not as dogmas, but as tools for her spiritual development. Thanks for being here, Yunuen. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to show you some slides. And yes, I'm not expert at all in this extensive topic. And I'm going to go through some quotations and some observations I made about this third object. Oh, how can I move on? Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, as we have already know or heard, the Theosophical Society was founded in 1875, and I'm going to reread the third object of this society that aims to investigate two main and extensive topics. One is to investigate the hidden mysteries of nature under every aspect possible, and the second is the psychic and spiritual powers latent in human beings, especially. So as we can see, this is a really broad aim. So I look for how do they try to achieve this object, because it's very, very wide. So reading the Key of Theosophy, published in 1889 by HPV, she indicated some activities that TS would apply for achieving that object. And they are by publications where no lecture or personal teachings are possible. Another activity is to keep alive the spiritual intuition in humans, to oppose and contract bigotry, as we have already heard from Kim for previous experiences, that means intolerance or fanaticism in every form, not only religious, but scientific or social. And to seek to obtain knowledge of all the laws of nature and to diffuse it, to encourage to study the laws least understood based on the true knowledge of nature instead of superstitious beliefs based on blind faith and authority. So this is kind of revolutionary for those times, but for now as well. To sift popular traditions, to discover the secrets of nature and pursuing the inquiry for widening the field of scientific and philosophical observation. As we can see, even though these activities were set all more than 100 years ago, they are still very actual. They are still needed, and hopefully we are trying to still carrying them out. Our present situation nowadays, when it seems academic science develops in an extreme accelerated way, the third object of the TS is still valid and suggests us to investigate the laws of nature that are still a mystery for the common academical knowledge. That does not mean to develop paranormal faculties, but to expand our consciousness and develop some faculties that reside within every human being. All of us are capable for trying to develop these abilities. Which are they? Intuition, that sometimes in this world or in academic world, they try to stop us being guided by our intuition, because intuition, it doesn't have a material or physical proof to some phenomena to exist. But we need to trust in ourselves and don't quiet that impulse that is within us. Discernment is, in somehow I call it ethics, because inside of us we already know what it is good or bad to ourselves and to others and to everything. So this training, let's say, in trying to know which is the correct path, it's the freedom to analyze it, to know what it feels good and is not affecting others. Universal love, as we already saw in the first and the second objects of the TS, is a quality or an ability we need to develop. And sometimes it is hard, because it is easy to love your family or your friends, but maybe it's not that easy to do it with other people that thinks and behaves in different ways than you do. But we need to try and to practice this every day. Eagerness to perform altruistic work. We need to realize that not all our actions should be only for our own benefit. We should invest some energy and some work to the benefit of others. And we, at the end of this type of actions, we will realize that it's a good inversion. And awareness of the eternal. We need to practice, if we are not yet aware of the existence of something farther from physical life, we need to be open to know that there is a path that is eternal and that is not going to finish when our physical life finishes. And this going to lead us to try to have a vision of the truth, knowing that our human mind won't be capable to take it, all of it in one piece. Our human mind is only watching or being capable of attaining a part of the truth, but we need to be aware that the absolute truth is bigger and it's there and we should attain to it, but be conscious that we are not going to have it, all of it, in this body, in this mind. And well, on the key of the Theosophy, HPV as well mentioned that study will be always more beneficial when it's performed not in sectarian groups or individually, because adepts, this higher hierarchy that try to guide humanity, will always help to unveil the truth for those who have not selfish intentions. And I quote, "The most important of all aims are those which are likely to lead the relief of human suffering under any or every form, moral as well as physical. And we believe the former to be far more important than the latter. Theosophy has to inculcate ethics. It has to purify the soul if it would relieve the physical body. It is not studying occultism for selfish ends, for the gratification of one's personal ambition, pride, or vanity, that one can ever reach the true goal, that of helping suffering humankind. Nor is it studying one single branch of the esoteric philosophy that one becomes an occultist, but by studying, if not mastering, them all." So as we can see, even our studying of this philosophy is more beneficial if we do it in groups, and if these groups are open and don't have a selfish goal at the end. And well, this investigation of all these natural phenomena, how should we perform it? Because we already know that science does that, but why science is not totally correct? So I'm going to quote another founder of the TS, who was William Q. Judge. And in the second edition of his book, The Ocean of the Theosophy, published in 1893, he mentioned that our investigation process for discovering the true natural laws should not be guided only by curiosity, as sometimes sciences do, not by selfishness, as some companies do, neither by economical interest, but by the potential capability of every human being eager to unreveal the mysteries that exist within oneself, and by consequence in the universe. Thus, philosophy and ethics must first be learned and practiced before any development of other abilities. Almost 130 years passed after that publication, and humanity has experienced relevant events as the First and Second World Wars, and other less negative, like neuroscience development, space traveling, and internet connection that bring us here together. However, we should be aware that most of true nature mysteries have not yet been unrevealed to humanity. And probably that's because our ethical behavior has not yet fully developed among us. So even though nowadays more than 130 years has passed of this text, we can realize that we still have a lot of work to do and a lot to relate with the others, and that these objects are still very valid and needed. So I'm quoting again Mr. Judge's words, and he said, "The Lodge of Masters does not care of science unless it aims to better man's state morally as well as physically. And no aid will be given to science until she looks at man and life, well, human being instead of only man, and life from the moral and spiritual side. For this reason, those who know all about the physical world are proceeding with a reform in morals and philosophy before any great attention will be accorded to the strange and seductive phenomena possible for the inner personal of man, powers of man. At the present, in that time, in 1893, the cycle has almost run its course for this century. Now, as a century ago, the forces are slackening. The Lodge hopes that by the time the next tide begins to rise, that the West will have gained some bright knowledge of true philosophy of man and nature, and be then ready to bear the lifting of the veil a little bit more." So for our discussion, I would like to yourselves to make you this question: which human faculty, intuition, discernment, universal love, eagerness to perform altruistic work, awareness of the eternal, or vision of the true, do you think you need to develop as soon as possible, and why? Thank you very much for listening, and that's all from me.
Thank you, Yunuen, for sharing your views on this topic and for putting the focus that there are not telepathy or, I don't know, magic powers to develop, but ethics, altruism, and universal love. Thank you. So now we have finished the first part of our meeting. So please, you can now raise your hands, write down in the chat box, or simply open your mic.
I was trying to search how I can raise the hand in Zoom, but I think I'm the host, so I cannot do it. But anyway, thank you for all the participants. I just wanted to say that I'm also aware of comments in YouTube in case there is a comment. A few people are watching us from there. But I do have an initial question. I think these gatherings are not only to gather knowledge, but also to know each other. We are kind of creating this international network of young people who know each other, and it's very nice to listen to each of you and understand how you think and what you have to say. So my question would be, from the three objectives or the three objects, was there any one particular that kind of brought you to the TS or made you stay in the TS? So is there any object that rings a bell inside you more strongly? Because we know that everybody is expected to accept the first one, but I suppose every person probably feels more attracted to one of them, and why is it, and how do you feel about it? I think it would be nice to hear how you personally refer to these objects? So that was the question.
Okay, in my case, I think was the second, because, well, I live in a very Catholic country, and as a scientist, I always was confronted with these beliefs because I couldn't believe them. And even though I tried to escape confrontation, deep in myself, I thought that there would be a way to be agree in all these religions that exist all over the world. Because for me, the first one was already obvious for me. I thought like we are so similar inside. As a chemist, I know that, no? We are so similar to each other, and why our thinking and behavior should be so different. But if we look at us as the similar we are, we can, or we could imagine that we all come from the same source. But the second one was really conflictive for me. How could we get an agreement on all these religions that exist all over the world? So for me, the second was the most appealing in the times I joined. Thank you.
If I may, well, when I was a boy and a teenager, I was very much attracted by fantasy books, and I was attracted by the beauty of magic that was described in those books. So when I was growing up, I had a friend. We started reading books about magic together, and at one moment, I came across the Secret Doctrine. And since that moment, the search like finished, I knew that that was it. So you could say that in my case, well, really the motivation was beauty, the beauty of the consciousness of the, well, we are all, I think, immortal spiritual beings, right? And so this ability of mind over matter, of wielding these things, that was what attracted me initially. But when I first came to the meeting of the Theosophical Society, I met two of my best friends who were Theosophists, and so practically it so happened that the first goal, well, they became a family for me, my spiritual family. So that's my experience.
Was that a question to us or to everybody?
Well, initially to you, but I suppose if any other person wants to come and comment, it will be nice and yeah, open to that, I suppose.
Okay, cool. I don't know. I used to like, well, I joined thinking, the thing is that the Sydney Library for the TS has 18,000 books on occult philosophy. So when I went there, I was like, whoa, I gotta join this society. This is really cool. And the first thing I did was I joined also a Key to Theosophy study course. And that's when I started to understand, okay, so there's more to just reading books. And that's pretty much it, like in my part for that. But I kind of like the first object a lot, and it's because I worked for trade unions for the last 12 years. So I really like the whole thing about fraternity, equality, and what's the other one? Fraternity, equality. There's another word I forgot.
Liberty?
Yeah, liberty.
Freedom?
That's right. So I kind of linked that to that as well. So that's why I like it.
Yeah, I can give a quick one. For me, I think so. Thinking about it, like initially, I thought, okay, actually, it was probably two. I'd started kind of getting interested in religion again and studying, and wanting to kind of put puzzle pieces together, basically, and that was my initial interest in Theosophy. And here in Singapore, we have something called a course in Theosophy, is like a crash course over like maybe 7 to 10 lectures, and we do that nearly every year, and that was kind of what got me to join. But really, I think that's just the surface level of things, right? If anything, the first object is probably the root of it. A friend told me that maybe it would be a good idea to join. I was like, okay, sure, why not? And that was kind of how I joined. And of course, it is, you know, I think like some people said, like having a spiritual family and finding like-minded people, right, in this community that I think keeps me coming back as well. And that energy kind of grows over time, the more you put in, and you know, the more you get out of it as well. So yeah, that's really my reason.
Okay, I think I'll go after then. No, I haven't, although I'm not a speaker today. Well, I was raised in a Catholic environment like many of you. And well, I wouldn't know how to explain, but religion give me the chills, really, because all the teachers were always saying, well, if you don't behave like this, or if you don't do this like in this very specific way, you are definitely going to hell. Well, I didn't understand that, and how a religion and a God that it's supposed to be all love and mercy could be like that. So when I started reading Theosophical teachings, I acknowledge, okay, there's a space that all religions share, and that it's love, and that all human beings, in despite of, well, what the first object of the TS says, can be. So I would say it was the first object, really.
I will go next. I will just answer and introduce another question. I think that I think that the first object is not obvious, because actually there are many ways to understand this object. And sometimes when we think that it is obvious, we lose a great part of its content, and we don't discuss a lot about its meaning. So my question is, maybe it's for Julian, but who spoke about the first one. But I think that I would like to hear everyone on this. I've been reading a lot about brotherhood these last days, and on some books, and what does it really mean to build a nucleus of universal brotherhood and brotherhood only. What does it mean? And I've been struggling to equate. For me, it was obvious to equate brotherhood with equality. I never questioned it. And then I found some books, a different view, and some going in a way of equality as against nature, because you don't find equality in nature, and this kind of views. But for me, it is really hard to see this way. So I would like to, I honestly would just like to listen from you. How do we equate brotherhood with equality? What is this equality subjectively speaking? What is the content of it? Just to, I don't know, just to deepen our discussion here. I hope you understood the question.
I think, thank you. I'll try and respond. Maybe someone else will do it better, but I don't know. I guess for me, universal brotherhood, and its relation to equality. I guess in the theosophical sense, brotherhood would mean what I mentioned earlier about the fundamental propositions, how basically from the beginning all living beings, all sentient beings come from the universal oversoul. And the idea is to kind of try and understand that. And therefore, it says there to form a nucleus without distinction of race, creed, sex, or caste, because at the end of the day, if we believe in karma and reincarnation, at some point or another, we are all those things. We are all the different races. We form part of all the different creeds. We're part of all the genders, of all the castes and all the colors throughout the ages in every incarnation that we have. So in a sense, that's why through the first object, we should try and understand what that means. The thing with equality is that it's more mundane in a sense. So equality in society is different to universal brotherhood only because most people that talks about equality are linking it to politics. But if you link it to universal brotherhood, then you have to start looking at the secret doctrine and all the occult philosophy that comes from the TS to link it and to understand it. Well, that's my opinion anyways. But the idea, I guess, also is that the society was trying to envision a future in humanity where we would all be equal. So that's why the objects were made there for us to envision that this could happen in the future, just as it did in the past. So that's why, even if it's not happening now in real life, it's nice to be able to envision it and to visualize it as well, the equality and the brotherhood. Yeah, I guess I don't know what else.
I would
Nobody's
like to add to that. Oh, sorry.
okay, Jocelyn, go ahead, please.
I would like to respond to also Rafael's question. I think, and to the question for equality, I think that one of the reasons that at least I became, I identify with the first object of theosophy, it was because I left my home when I was 16, and then I moved to California, and then I moved to Chicago, and now I'm here in Boston. And through all those movements, I got to experience meeting a lot of people who I became very grateful for all the teachings that that they gave me without any other, without looking to get something out of it. And I received a lot of love, a lot of acceptance. And throughout, I became aware that, there is a lot of people who they were not the same, different races, different everything, and different religion, different politic views, and I just became aware that they were really beautiful people, and I was very grateful for all of their teachings, and I think that's what brought me closer to Theosophy and for the first object, and in the sense of unity. I think or one of the things that I think it's important is that universal brotherhood takes you to a sense of unity, because often we are taught to be by ourselves. by being, we are very individualistic in a sense. And I think it's important to understand that we're not, we're not here alone. We're here as a unity. And until we get that sense of unity and we treat other people as brothers, then we can be, we can start to have that, I forgot the word, to come together and, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But in a sense, to equality, to be equality, I feel like we cannot get equality without having the sense of brotherhood or unity.
Hi. Can I go next? So for the first question by Rafael, the three objects of the society. Well, for those who don't know me, my initial encounter was my initial, what led me to Theosophy was before I was actually into the paranormal. So I was with another group and we were trying to study the paranormal. We were into ceremonial magic and all of those stuff, but it didn't really answer some of my questions. It didn't really quite fit into what I was looking for. And somebody from that group, and remember I was 18 back then. So when they told me that I have they commented that I had somehow of a philosophical mind. They suggested I try to study theosophy, and I loved it because theosophy has, it's like a paradigm. It gives you all of these information. Like what Jeffrey Hudson said, you can learn a lot more things in studying one book, one really good book in theosophy than in attending like 100 seances, because you can really go down into the specific metaphysical laws and the physical laws of the universe. It gives you a sense of purpose, where you are within the greater scheme of things. It gives you a philosophical idea of what you should be doing and what does it mean to become a human being. So that was how I was brought to theosophy. So from being a practitioner to being somebody who looks at life in a different way, that was my journey. And then for the question from Ananda, I'd just like to make a comment. So for equality, I think that for me, equality means treating people, treating equals as equals and treating unequals as unequals. So for example, if we are all employees in a specific company, we all have basic benefits from that company. So because we're all employees, we should all have that same basic benefits. But of course, not everyone contributes in the same manner, and not everyone works as hard as the other person. So therefore, if somebody works harder, then they should also have more benefits as compared to the others. So there are some benefits that are basic to everyone. So these things should be given equally. But also there are certain things that give a person more merit, and that merit should provide them better benefits. So I think that's one way of viewing equality. Also, last week we had a discussion on the five love languages. So I mentioned there that people are generally the same, but we're also different. So for example, we all need love because we cannot survive without love. But because each one of us is different, we have a different love language. So some people, when you tap them on the back, that means a lot to them. But some people would rather hear a good job, or somebody praising them for something that they did something well. So I think that's also one way of looking at equality, that at our basic core, we're all the same, but on a personality level, we're all different at the same time. Brotherhood is a bit more difficult. I think it depends on where you are, because I think that when I started my study of theosophy, brotherhood was like right human relationship for me. It's about me respecting another person, me not violating another person. But as we grow and we develop, for example, right now, when I think of universal brotherhood as spoken in the three objectives, I'm thinking more of the Buddhist idea of metta, that everyone, we have a desire that everyone be safe, that everyone be happy, that everyone be free from all suffering. And that should include yourself as well. So I think that perhaps at another time, the definition of brotherhood would also evolve. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Greetings to everyone from ADR and congratulations all the speakers for a very wonderful exposition. And just to share a few thoughts on this subject that, okay, I think being in India, for me, and of Hindu religion, maybe adapting to universal brotherhood was a very easy thing. I mean, not, I mean, the concept of universal brotherhood, because here there is a phrase called Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. The whole world is your family. So, I mean, that is that, of course, in every religion, there are some superstitions and rituals that degrade the religion. That's another thing. But that was the essence of that. And, but coming to Ananda's thing, that what brotherhood in essence means, I think for me it's very simple, that having the same origin, because whether it's brotherhood or sisterhood, it is coming from the same origin. So if the origin is same, so in that, in essence, everybody is equal, not necessarily in the stage of evolution. I mean, but what often happens, we tend to look at equality in the physical form or in the manifested world. So we like socialism, that everyone should have same money or everyone should be having same thing. That can, nature is full of diversity. There cannot be everyone at the same level. We have an enlightened being also, and we have a terrorist also at the same time in the same manifested world. So that's why there are, but still the terrorist or the enlightened being are the same brothers in essence, in their essence. So that's what I understand from that. And for me, actually, I mean, of course, it is in general thing, but I think that the main objective is only the first objective of the Theosophical Society. But since it is, and the other two objectives are the aims and means to achieve the first objective. Because, okay, how will I understand universal brotherhood? Until and unless I read and study and understand the religion of other person, I would not be able to understand their concepts there. And until and unless I do this study, I will not be able to make some parallels that, oh, the same thing has been said in my religion, the same thing now quantum physics is saying, the same thing has been said in philosophy. So ultimately, everything is pointing towards the same direction. And when we begin to investigate the laws of nature and powers, as Kristin said, that then actually that love will only realize, will be realized when we go within and realize that Buddhic nature within us, the intuition. Because right now, the first object may be as an intellectual form. I have read it, understood it, and I can explain it. But maybe when it comes to some cross, like I like this and somebody else like also, maybe there is a conflict. So until and unless that realization of that comes, which will only come by study and by going deep within, then that first objective will be really realized and lived, that we talk about. So that's what I feel about the three objectives. And thank you everyone once again for great presentations. Yeah.
Thank you, Sikar. I believe Svyatoslav raised his hand, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I think we can understand what brotherhood is better maybe if we think about the opposite. What is the opposite of the brotherhood? The opposite is separation and inequality also. So I think they come from egoism, from too much self-centered attitude. So again, we come to this, heresy of self, of this great heresy of separatedness and delusion of the self to which we grasp too much, and selfishness basically. So when it is too powerful, then we have division, we have inequality, all sorts of problems. But when we manage to overcome them, then we see that we start regarding others just the same as ourselves. Then there is more opportunity to work together in all ways, in studying theosophy, the esoteric things, in just working together for the everyday life in the everyday world, And the next step would be to sincerely care about other people's well-being. When this we have, when we have this is the brotherhood. This I think is what we can call brotherhood. And I also agree with the guys that said that we are all different. Yes, because equality and having differences, they don't contradict each other. We are all equal because we all come from the one universal whole, and we will get back there at the end of our evolution journey. And we are all also equal because we all want to be happy. No one wants to suffer. We all need air, water, and food. These basic things are also the same. So we are at the same time same but very different. And in Mahatma Letters, I found this quote that says, a universal brotherhood is one of the definitions is an association of affinities of strong magnetic yet dissimilar forces and polarities centered around one dominant idea. So we are all different, but we all have the same goal. So my main point is we should try to sincerely care about each other, and then we will have brotherhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So does any of you like to say something else? Yes, no? Okay, if there's no more comments, shall we have a couple of minutes of silence before we do the closing? Yeah, okay.
I think Isis wanted to speak.
Okay, go.
Hello, dear ones. I'm really proud of you all that you could go so deeply into this subject of tremendous importance. What are we here for? What's the objective of our lives? And how we together can contribute to this union, to this advancement, to this development. And it is very obvious the objectives of the Theosophical Society were not written just by chance, but they gave us a focus on going together to help humanity to build a better world for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isi, so much for being here with us.
I would just like to thank everyone for the answers for the question, and because before when I asked the question, I forgot to thank all the speakers for the talks, and also thank you all for the answers. I feel that there's a lot for us to go deeper and deeper in this discussion. So it's really nice to listen to all of you and just take notes and go. Yes, that's it. Just as thankful.
Okay, thanks, Ananda. Any of you would like to say something, comment something, ask something? It's your last chance.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It was the first time I talk about Theosophy as a opponent, and it was a little bit frightening, but at the end it was good. So thank you for the chance, and it was great to meet you all, and I hope we continue meeting.
Yeah, thanks a lot as well for giving me the chance, even though I'm not in the same age bracket now.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm also grateful for this chance. I said in the beginning it was a very great opportunity. So thank you for inviting. And it's always very pleasant to be with international brothers and sisters from all over the world, and I think in the youth forum especially. Thank you.
I am with you, Julian, on the age, in the age.
and thank you, Raphael, for putting everything together, and Miriam for hosting as well.
Thank you. Should we do the closing then?
Yes, okay. Thank all of you. Okay, then as I was saying previously, shall we have a couple of minutes of silence? Okay. Sure. Okay, let us have some moments of silence and reflection of what has been said today, if we have agreed or not with our companions about all what we have learned, and that if we can find that space of brotherhood, meaning brotherhood, what means to each and every one of us, which can be different. And well, let's try to make these three objects of the Theosophical Society practical in our lives, and to share all the beauty we find in Theosophy in our daily lives. So to do the closing, I read an investment invocation, okay? So, O hidden light, vibrant in every atom, O hidden light, shining in every creature, O hidden love, embracing all in oneness, may all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, so the fourth online gathering of Young Theosophists is declared closed at this moment. Thank you so much to all the assistants, all the speakers, all the participants for your beautiful and inspiring talks. And may we'll be sharing next time. Take care and love to you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
See ya.